Welcome to the DingeCast. We are driven by a passion for discovery and the belief that history should be uncovered. Our mission is to reveal the hidden realities of the past to bring history into the light. Welcome to the DingeCast.
All right, everybody, welcome to the DingeCast. We've got an action-packed episode for you tonight. Action meaning we're going to talk about ancient seafaring people. Now, there are different ways of looking at how long you think this has been going on, and new science and new discoveries have really opened up this topic. And we're looking at some stuff that is just phenomenal. I mean, we're talking 35, 40, 60,000 years. So tonight, Ryan, Mr. Behind the Scenes, is going to, he's got a great deck, and we're going to get into a lot of this stuff. So, Mr. Behind the Scenes, let us continue and move forward.
Oh, let's do it. Yeah, this is such a cool topic for me because I feel like I always was under the impression that so much of advanced civilization started, like roughly 5,000 years ago. Before that, hunter-gatherers just not doing a whole lot. And every time they find something new, it really makes me have to go back to the drawing board here. So I wanted to put together just a few of the recent findings, plus just other items that we already knew about, and just piece this together to really get a better picture of what early humans and even what people before humans were doing, the Neanderthals and whatnot. So I figured seafaring is such an interesting one because it's one thing to make stone tools or structures, but to make, a vessel that can traverse the seas thousands and thousands of years ago is really remarkable. It just shows the human spirit to explore. I picture who's that crazy back then to just be like, let's just go towards the horizon. I swear we might find land.
Another interesting component of this, though, and you were just about to go to another slide. Let's take a look at that because,
Sure.
The Perry Reese map, we were talking a little bit about this. This was supposedly constructed from maps going all the way back to the Library of Alexandria.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think about it, though, they understood the currents as well as just saying, okay, let's just launch and get going, and we'll see if we find anything. Because, the funny thing is that when you get lost at sea, they can look for you for days, weeks, and months because the ocean is just so immense. So they must have had some working knowledge of currents, is what I'm saying. So that's just a point.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're right. They wouldn't just take a total gamble. They had to have some plan or some understanding of what they were getting themselves into. Especially if we look at how long this had been going on for. By the time we look at some of these examples, no matter how old they are, probably wasn't their first rodeo, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And yeah, I mean, the Peary Reese one is incredible. Like it's really interesting to look back at that time because everything was written on, I'll say papyrus. I know there was other mediums they wrote on, but they didn't age well. So it was like every 100 years, somebody had to transcribe it to make that fresh copy and then another fresh copy. And the fact that we've managed to stitch that together over time, that we were left with something that we still have is incredible. So the fact that even a quarter of Peary Reese's map is still, we still managed to recover that. It would have been incredible to get the whole thing. But thank goodness that he transcribed that one. So we didn't lose that one forever. I mean, again, Library of Alexandria, think of what we lost in that if only we had all of that. But that's why I wanted to cover this because I do a lot of research, I do go to the library. I actually read books, but a lot of stuff is on the internet. It's easily accessible. And it's hard to avoid getting into something that you're reading that looks legit. It's very exciting. And then you read into it more and you're like, oh, this isn't quite what I thought it was. So this is the what is it, the Gavin Menzies Map. And, I was studying China at the time, and this kind of popped up, and it all seemed to fit into what I was reading about, you know, because there's a lot of theories that the Chinese had discovered America before Columbus and all that stuff, and that maybe there is something to that, but we'll need a little bit more evidence to confirm that. But I don't have to read all of this; it's up on the screen if you want to pause it and take a look. But the point is, it's a great story, and it's very disappointing that this still makes its rounds because the analysis basically showed it's a 99.9% likely forgery. And
Right.
it's very disappointing because I feel like there's so much credible evidence out there that we're trying to piece together to understand the bigger picture. Stuff like this just gets in the way. It muddies the water, it makes it more difficult. So, as I'm doing research, it's like trying to put things into buckets. So I remember, like, okay, nothing with that, none of that fits into to everything else. So I have to rule that out and stick to what we do know and then draw conclusions from that, which is part of what I'm getting at. So even though the whole Chinese thing, I love early, pre-colonial America and all of that, but that's almost like recent history in comparison. So we just published an article on realdinge.com. There was a discovery. I think it may have been in 2024, but it was announced in February of this year, and then it was like officially unveiled. It's just within the last month. I mean, this is all very, very recent. And this was just yet another example. So again, there's constantly new discoveries. Each discovery is another piece of the puzzle. So you have to go back and reevaluate what you thought you knew, adding this piece into the puzzle and seeing how that maybe, expands or clarifies what we already thought we knew. So this one, they found tools that indicated that they had the capabilities to build advanced seafaring crafts. And again, 40,000 years ago, right? Because ancient Egypt, what is that? At the most, it's like 5,500 years.
Yeah.
And to most of us, that's ancient. That is 5,500 years ago. 40,000 blows it out of the water. It's hard to wrap your head around because you feel like there's such a gap, right? It's like you hit that kind of 12,000 year ago mark at the end of the last ice age, like the Younger Dryas period, and everything kind of goes dark for a while. So this discovery was huge for me. I got so excited, so I had to publish that one. But we're not going to stop there. This isn't like 40,000 was as far back as we go. Get ready for this. Okay, I got a few examples that hopefully paint this well-rounded picture for us. Made a little chart just to show. This is a kind of a spoiler alert, but just to show how far back we're talking here. So let's start with the first one. This was actually one of the first that I got into. The Aborigines. The first time I saw this, somebody said, "Oh, there's evidence of them sailing 50,000 years ago." And 50,000 years ago? Like, are you sure you didn't add a zero? And I put this map here because if you're not familiar with Sahul or the Sunda Shelf, let me just kind of explain what this is showing you. So this is modern day Australia here, and the darker gray area is where the land used to be above water. Obviously, this is all now submerged. So this was kind of like one big supercontinent. And then the Sunda Shelf is fascinating because this is the part of Southeast Asia and the ocean where there's all those little islands, Micronesia and all that. The Sunda Shelf essentially is when the ocean levels rather were lower, about 400 feet, if I'm not mistaken. Um, all of that was land. So all the continents that we know today were kind of like the mountain peaks of a big, big landmass. So it's important to understand that when we look at this evidence to understand that maybe the distances they traveled, it's different than the landscape now. So you got to think if they're island hopping, consider where it actually was a landmass versus it was open seas at the time. Either way, they were there is evidence of them actually sailing through these areas, and it's just remarkable that they do this. I feel like they kind of just get compartmentalized as just, oh, they were so tribal and just primitive. You know, they were barely getting by, just hunting and making fires in these little straw huts. For me, this challenges all of that.
Well, it really must inquire at this point in time about the idea of the disappearance of Atlantis and whether or not there were super advanced civilizations somewhere at some point in time, even maybe in many places around the world, many thousands of years ago. So, in other words, let's say that there was a giant reset. Let's say a comet or an asteroid hit the Earth and
Some kind
created
of cataclysm. Yeah.
radical change, right? Everybody would have to actually essentially start over from scratch. Now, there would be some survivors that would bring with them some basic knowledge. I mean, it reminds me of H.G. Wells' Time Machine. You know, he came back to get a book so he could teach the Eloi, about modern ideals. But I just think it's fascinating to think about the idea that we're looking right now at about 50 to 65,000 years ago for people who are navigating between these islands. And it's just fascinating to me. The other thing that's interesting is uh, what it says here is that Sahul was a South Pacific Western Ocean located approximately north to south between equator and the 44th parallel. And but the immensity of the amount of land and or ocean. So Sahul was separated from Sunda to its west by the Aleutian Archipelago.
Hmm.
At its largest, when ocean levels were at their lowest, it was approximately 10,600,000 square kilometers or 4,100,000 square miles. That's huge.
And so much is now underwater. So it's like
Yes.
it's very
Yeah.
difficult to excavate to really find, like not everybody lived in the mountains. I'm sure a lot of people lived in lower lands. And if that hasn't already just been destroyed by the sands of time, maybe there is something left to find down there that to really help piece this together.
Well, if you've ever watched the show Life Without People,
I think I've heard of that.
it's on the History
Yeah.
Channel. They did this thing where they would go through periods of time like the first year and then the first 100 years and the first 1,000 years. I mean, by 1,000 years, you can't find any trace of human beings,
Yeah.
from a huge city. So,
It
yeah.
That's what I mean. It's like if we're lucky that we're able to find what we have found, to be honest, you're right.
Yeah. Yes.
And like, well, Atlantis still remains elusive and a piece of mythology or whatever that just because it hasn't been discovered, if it is out there, the idea, like what you mentioned, if there was a big cataclysm, I think I wish I had the specifics, but there was a point in time where they suspect that a great cataclysm happened. The human population went down so severely low that humans were almost wiped out,
Right.
and we managed to recover and come back. But you have to think of how much knowledge was lost as a result of that, and that's kind of where those disconnects happen. That we were advanced once upon a time, devastating environmental impacts happen. We're just trying to survive. And the few survivors maybe weren't the scientists, not everybody was literate back in the day.
Right.
And then population gets rebuilt and a piece of that thread is lost. And that's why this work is so interesting, that for how much was lost, we have the ability to piece this together. And it's not even like good pieces, right? You find a piece of a bone or a shard of pottery, and it's like the detective work that goes into understanding that is remarkable.
Yeah, I was talking to you earlier about how the only reason I watch The Curse of Oak Island is because of the little tidbits of stuff that they find. It begins to tell a bigger story. These little tiny pieces, these little nails and these little pieces of jewelry that they uncover. To
Hmm.
me, it's fascinating, but you have to be a person who is into those details. If you're not, you miss a whole big picture.
Yes. Didn't they find a Roman coin there a few years back too,
I
which
think
they
they
were
did.
like
Yeah,
like a out of place artifact, to say the
right,
least?
right. Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I mean, who knows? Eric the Red or whoever could have gotten that, and it just, they brought things with Europe along the way. Who knows? But nobody was expecting to find that. So super interesting. And
Yeah,
and
it
again,
is.
just that little piece, one coin.
Yeah.
it opens up the possibility for so many stories to try to understand why it was there, who brought it. It's fascinating.
Oh, it's
So,
totally fascinating.
oh yeah. So if you're watching this and you're like 50,000 years, 60,000 years, that's not that old. All right. Here's a little bit more on these guys. Just the one thing I really wanted to point out was the megafauna at the time. So just
Mm.
giant wombats, right? Because we're talking last ice age here, and we still had megafauna. So these guys were hunting large game that we don't see today, which it's just a life that it's hard to almost relate to. Like I always think, could you even imagine seeing a woolly mammoth just walking through your neighborhood, right? It's like, no, I can't. It's so foreign, but it really wasn't that long ago. So, but speaking of what was long ago, this is what I was trying to get at. 700,000 years ago?
Oh yeah.
Are you kidding me? I mean, this is what I love. So, Homo floresiensis, if you're not familiar, these were kind of like the Hobbit people, right? I think their height was about 3.5 feet or so. Home to islands in the Indonesia area. So it's one of those intermediary evolutionary um, humans along the way. I'm failing to have the correct term, but I figure you guys know what I'm talking about here. So
Well,
even
let me make a point.
yeah, please.
The Watusi in Africa.
Yeah.
These people are often 7 feet tall or taller. I mean, the whole tribe.
Mm-hmm.
So there are going to be, as we get more objective and more realistic about what we're dealing with in terms of the variation of human species, the true variation from 3.5 feet, it doesn't matter because people adapt.
Mm-hmm.
They adapt and they adapt as nature requires. And so if you're 3.5 feet tall, you have to be. I mean, look what happens when people go into space, for goodness sake. Their body starts to change, their bones start to change, their heart starts to change. That's just within a period of weeks and months.
Mm-hmm.
So the human species is very adaptable. So people got to get over this idea, this model of the world that they've been brainwashed to believe. Oh, 6,000 years. That's insane.
That's
Anybody that believes
so
that is insane, in my opinion. But I don't mean to offend everybody, just some people, because
well, I
it's
guess
not
it's more like,
possible.
if we were taught that as children or whatever, it's like, okay, I can understand you arrived there, but in light of new information like this, why
Yeah.
would you still hang on to that? It feels like, you know, let's evolve with the facts here. And people obviously, like, change isn't always welcome. We have our biases. We like to stick to what we know, and it can be challenging to accept new information and work that into your belief structure. But I feel like that's part of why I wanted to present this, because this is I mean, it's not like uncomfortable for me to do this. I enjoy it, but it is an odd sensation to feel like, why is there so much more to still learn? I thought I knew enough, and apparently I feel like I know 5% of what I possibly could know.
Yeah.
And the cool thing with these guys is, I feel like because they're small, they could almost use it to their advantage. Imagine Neanderthals trying to all pile on a boat together. If you're only 3.5 feet tall, it's like, go ahead and throw those little guys in this little thing. You guys will be all right. You're not going to weigh it down. So maybe they could use that to their advantage to some degree. So
Well, 22 million years ago, New Zealand was almost nothing of it above the ocean.
okay.
And so if you think about it, over however many thousands or millions of years, humans have had to migrate in order to survive, what, seven known cataclysms over a period of several million, 100 million years or whatever.
Devastating events. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you take a look at these people, and these people are just a remnant of other people, because it said that they were on a number of islands that they discovered, in that same area, a number of groups of these small people. To me, this is the beauty of the human race, is that we are so adaptable. So, I mean, there are people that live out in the Sahara Desert where it never rains, never rained in 100 years.
Unbelievable.
How's
Yeah.
it possible?
That's like I mean, not human, but the sand cat. It's like, how does a tiny little cute cat live out in the desert where there's no
Yeah.
water?
Yep.
They're like, well, when it finally catches a snake or a lizard, the juices that it gets while eating it,
Yeah.
that's the hydration it gets. It doesn't
Yeah.
get water. It gets the
Yep.
water from its prey. Talk about adapting, right?
Right.
It's just unbelievable. Um, and I had to cover Japan because I feel like I'm still seeing more news coming out about this. I should have put this up on the slide deck, but they're finding more of these underwater settlements, right?
Right.
That sea is dotted with who knows how many islands. And when you go back and you realize, okay, let's consider when the sea level was lower, what were we really working with here? And this could be a whole we could do just Japan as a whole episode because there's so much, even again in recent news, to really look at. So I just wanted to at least include them in here to show we're not talking about just the South China Sea and the Australia area. The point is this is global. This wasn't like an anomaly. Oh, well, there was one group of people that mastered, seafaring. It seems like it's all across the board, which is just unbelievable. And you can see here's kind of like a modern map, but there is so much more to explore there. But it's a lot of fun to try to get underwater with the vacuum and the shovels and the scuba gear, and but people are out there doing it. So good. Thank you for thank you for doing that for the rest of us, because I'm not really interested in getting in the water like that, but I love seeing what you guys find.
Yeah, the thing that I've heard is that there's more to discover in the ocean and under the water than there is on land.
I believe that. The more I read, the more that just makes sense because again, like where would you make a civilization? On the coast, next to a
Yep.
river.
Right.
Where are those now? They're under 30, 40 feet of water, if not more. So,
Yep.
unbelievable. And just to kind of keep tying this all together, right? So we everybody knows about the ancient Greeks. It's taught and studied them and the Romans probably more than anything else, but the reason why I included this one is because it's the same land that there is so much history on those islands. It's just unbelievable. But then, we're talking, pre Neolithic, Neanderthals even. It's still debated. We don't quite know. And I guess that was my point before, is that in a lot of these cases, like just to be clear, there are times where we do find tools for boats or remnants that could have been a ship. A lot of the evidence for this comes from the fact that we find evidence of one people on multiple islands across an incredible vast amount of space and distance. So just the fact that we're seeing it dotted in all those places means the only way that could have happened was to sail there. So you don't need a lot of evidence necessarily, um, but it's just interesting when you find evidence of a group of people who are generally understood as living in one place to find a settlement for them thousands of miles away. That's what's so remarkable. Even if you're island hopping, you're not sailing the open seas for forever. I mean, because the Polynesians mostly get the credit for the early sea expeditions, which is still only I think about 5,000 something years ago, and it was remarkable. They crossed from island to island to island, going crazy distance through the Pacific. I mean, they reached Easter Island, the Rapa Nui,
Right.
and I mean, and that's a nothing of an island. If you look at the map, there's nothing else around. It's the nearest anything is so far away.
Yeah, it's about
How do you
I think
even
it's
find it?
1,200 miles is the close I think.
It's something ridiculous like that.
Yeah.
Like that's so the fact that, and it's not like they made it and then they just stayed there. They went there and then there's evidence of them going back and forth for generations. So it's like
Right.
it's really remarkable. So just it's not like this was by chance, by accident. Maybe the first voyage was, but they became very comfortable and knowledgeable of those sea routes, and which goes back to how this conversation started with the maps, that
Yeah.
they certainly understood at least some aspect of what they were doing. It wasn't like, I don't know, go sail that way and just wait till you hit land. And they at some point they knew where they were going and they knew how to find it, no
Well,
matter
it
how small of
also
it. It's a needle in a haystack in the Pacific Ocean.
yeah.
It's
Yeah. And
tiny.
it also we have to look at the potential of celestial navigation as well because the stars have always guided people, and they may have passed down from generation to generation. Some people that survived and were able to pass that information of the stars, back in that time, to the other people that they were involved in. And
Good
so
point.
it just, to me, is just fascinating. Again, the star people, by the way, every culture has their own version of star people, but who knows? I'm just saying.
Yeah, yeah. No, people always ask me, they're like, why were they so obsessed with the stars? Why were they so knowledgeable of tracking them to essentially act as their calendar? My answer is usually there wasn't a TV or a radio or whatever else to look at night. Your entertainment's up there. The sun
Yes,
goes down.
that
You
is
have all
true.
the time in the world to absorb it and study it. So it makes sense that they were very, very well educated on that. Um, Again, same kind of area, but again, look at the time frame. This is remarkable,
Wow.
right? Like, I feel like if only we could find more of this, but I'm sure it's incredibly difficult to find any remnants that are maybe still there. But like we say, it only takes, who knows what the next discovery will be. It only takes that one piece. I mean, you mentioned I'm going to say it wrong, probably the anti-Kythera mechanism.
Yes.
Nobody was expecting to find that. And I'm sure when they did, they were like, what in the world? What in the world is
That,
this thing? This is,
yeah, if you want to talk about advanced technology, that was advanced technology. I
yeah,
mean, the way that it was constructed and built was advanced technology. I mean,
yeah,
today, if we were going to build something like that today, they would have to have, people who really understood, first of all, the stars and the rotation of the planets and every other thing. That was thousands of years ago.
yeah. I can barely understand how a modern day watch is constructed, right? Like
Right.
let alone,
Right.
yeah, unbelievable. So again, just for me, like I feel like I just always assumed Neanderthals had limited capabilities up to a point, and it was, Homo sapiens that really were the spark to the innovation, imagination of all these, adventures and technology. But it's really changing the way I need to evaluate this. I'm like, okay, so if Neanderthals were maybe a little bit more sophisticated, what else about Neanderthals is there to learn? I really want to read more into this to understand how much do we know? How much evidence can we put together to get a better picture of these guys? Because this just challenges so much of what I knew. And obviously, they were larger. I think they even, what was it? They were built in a way they didn't have to cook their food. That was a big difference with the shift to
Right.
humans, that our bodies needed it to be cooked. They could just eat raw meat like an animal.
Right.
Not that we're not animals, but
Right.
we're quite domesticated beings, if I can
Unless, of course, you're at your
say so.
favorite sushi restaurant.
I was just my daughter was just asking me if you can eat puffer fish, and I was like, not unless you want to make your mouth numb. I think I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't think we
Right.
want to try that one.
Oh,
Let's
it's to
stick to
die
the cow.
for, literally.
What's that? Yeah, to
I
die for.
said,
Yeah. No, there was a restaurant I used to work at, and they brought in this specialty chef, and I can't remember the name of the fish, but it is a poisonous fish, and he's
yeah.
he's the guy that knows how to prepare it so you don't die.
Yeah.
But you have to sign a waiver before you eat it just in case. I'm like, yeah, I'm
Yeah.
good. I'll take a burger. I'm good on that.
Yeah, exactly.
Crazy, crazy. Um, the Timor Islands, similar kind of area, but again, it's like if this isn't that contained of a region, and I mean, the deep sea fishers, I wish I thought to pull this up beforehand, but maybe there's the group that basically they don't live on land, they live on the floating
Oh, yeah.
like homes, and they through so many generations of deep diving, their bodies, they have a bigger lung capacity than
Yeah, they can go
anybody
down
else.
for like 5 minutes at a time.
Oh, more, I've heard like 12.
Oh my
And
gosh.
and to go that deep without getting the bends, that they'd hold weights, jump in, go way, 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 way down, catch something, come back up to the surface. It takes generations of conditioning
Yeah.
to be able to get to that point. And they're still thriving. You can go, if you want to fly out there, you can go talk to them. They're still doing it just as they were
Mm.
hundreds, if not thousands of years ago.
Yeah. And it's
Uh,
wonderful to go back and actually contemplate the evolutionary forces at work that change these people. And this is what's so beautiful about the human race is that we are so adaptable. I'm going to say it again.
hmm Yeah, that's. I mean, we used to, we lost the tail for whatever, for reasons. There's so many things like that you adapt to your environment.
Right.
I don't want to get too deep into that, but it is true. Like, why do people in different parts of the world look a little different? Part of it is your environment. It
Absolutely.
conditions you for survival.
I mean, skin alone is perfect evidence of that.
That's what I mean.
Skin
Yeah.
tone.
It's a survival mechanism within us.
Yeah.
Or the ones who didn't evolve, they're not here anymore, and the ones
Well,
that
that's also
did,
true.
yeah.
Yeah.
So survival of the fittest, to say the least. And then we can bring it home a little bit to the Channel Islands in California. So,
By the way, I have hiked on that island.
oh man, tell me what
That's
that
where I
was
grew
like.
up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I figured. I wanted to put this in here. I figured this was your turf
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
So obviously I like this because it fits into my younger Dryas and the last ice age time frame. So that's always kind of piques my interest. Um, but also, there's the Bering Ice Bridge is the big theory. The people in Asia, they were able to cross through Russia over into Alaska, come down to the Americas, and that was the whole story. But more and more evidence suggests that that wasn't the only migration path. I'm sure some people did that. And it might not have even been just hiking, through the ice bridge. It looks like there are areas in that like Russia and Alaska area that may indicate it wasn't totally frozen or whatever, and they did kind of island hop a little bit. So if you're already island hopping, there's all these other theories that say, it's not crazy that some people could have reached here by boat. And stuff like this and a lot of other finds that we're not going to get into today for time reasons do support that theory. So it is still a theory, but as more evidence comes out, it kind of nudges us into that territory where we can say almost conclusively this happened. So that's why I feel like history is so alive, because I know I'm repeating myself, but every discovery adds to the piece of the puzzle, and sometimes those pieces are significant enough that it does solidify a theory. I love bringing up Percy Fawcett, right? Was it Percy Fawcett
Yes, it was.
for
Yeah.
Z? And
Yep.
everybody's like, "You're crazy," and this is a credible guy. He was well respected, and everyone's like, "You're crazy. You're trying to find this lost Amazon civilization, doesn't exist." And for 400 plus years, they're like, he was crazy. I don't know what he was doing. LiDAR scans basically found what he was looking for right where he was looking for it. It
Yep.
just got swallowed up by the jungle, like you said with
Yes.
the History Channel show. It doesn't take long for nature to reclaim what we put up, and maybe that's just the ability and the advantage of modern tech, that nobody 400 years ago could have found that unless you were really ready to get in there with your machete and clear the jungle and start digging. But we can fly by and do a scan, and you can see underground topographically exactly where those the foundations for those structures were. So,
Well, I think that in the future, and not so long from now, AI is going to reveal some even more amazing things.
and oh, for sure, because it just helps to accelerate this, right? It's
Yeah.
like it would take a human time to say, well, I've got, gosh, there's a billion different data points for me to analyze. I don't even have space on my wall to put all the pins up.
Yes.
Good. Feed it to the AI. Have it run that computation for you instead of your brain. Get the TLDR, and let's keep going. Yeah. I mean, AI is, for me, it's basically just an assistant. It's like whatever you
Yeah.
want to have happen, it will accelerate it for you. So if
Exactly.
that can be incorporated into this research, we're good, because my whole thing is that I want to I want answers in my lifetime, right? If I can die happy if we have a massive breakthrough that confirms some theory, or even something that nobody had even considered. I'll take that. I just want to know more about where we came from. And each of these to me is a piece of that, even though it's so in our distant past. There's stuff from even just a few thousand years. There's stuff from 200 years ago we don't even understand.
That's true.
But I feel like all of this is important. It's important to understand the full spectrum. If you're going to understand one piece of it, you need the bigger context to really, really piece that together. So again, here is another hominid species, the Homo luzonensis. Hopefully I said that right. Which, how many of these species are there, right? I feel like, but in school they're like there was three, and that was it. Homo erectus and Homo sapien, and now it's like I go to the museum and it's just a row of skulls that goes halfway down the whole room. So it's good that we keep finding this stuff because it's just remarkable. And again, well, here we are back in the Mediterranean, of course. And there weren't really any great pictures for this, so I think that picture is a Neolithic settlement, not a pre-Neolithic. So
Yeah.
apologies for that, but just to get you some kind of a reference there. But again, finding stone tools, food remains from so long ago. I was just reading about the name escapes me, but when they find these mummies from thousands of years ago, they're so well preserved. The last meal they ate is still in their stomach.
Wow.
We know what the guy had for dinner
Mm.
the day he died. That is insane.
Mm.
So I love it. I love all of this stuff. And then just to kind of tie it all back in, here we are again, Bering Sea. Uh, and it says possibly earlier, of course, because these are just estimates. If you study the Lenape people, their legend talks about migrating from the west. I believe they said they did encounter the Mississippian Mound people on the way to the East Coast, but they say that they had come probably. I'm paraphrasing here, but that they did cross the bridge. They came from Asia and all of that stuff, and this kind of matches up with that time frame. And the whole skin boats that everybody that they make. What was the it was an Irish monk, and this is just a legend, but there's a legend this Irish monk had made. I think it was a boat that was wrapped in leather or some kind of hide, and that was how it was able to stay afloat. And there was a guy, I can't remember, it was 10 years, 20 years ago, but he actually made a little like canoe in the style that this monk had done it to prove that it was possible. Like I think
Mm.
he sailed in the English Channel or something, but um, like you said, adaptable, right? They're like, okay, we we got to find a way to get out there and just to master how to build a boat to stay afloat. I mean, if you've ever tried to build a boat or just anything, you go in the woods, you chop some trees, try to tie them together. It's not that easy. It takes a lot of practice and experimentation to get it right. And especially in these choppy, icy waters, you don't want to fall in the water there. That sets
Ooh,
your clock to get to dying of hypothermia
you
pretty
are a
quickly.
goner.
Yeah. So the confidence they must have had in their technical abilities really speaks a lot to how advanced they must have been, or how desperate they were to get out of wherever they were to go
Yeah,
find opportunity or safety somewhere else.
I would say that would be a
Yeah.
big part of it.
Yeah. I look at the settlements in the cliffs on the Grand Canyon, which are so out in the middle of nowhere, and it's like how dangerous was life back then that's where you had to settle to feel safe. Like wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then I just threw this in. I didn't have a whole lot to say, but the Mungo man, the Mungo woman,
Yep.
um, very well intact skeletons that date back so far, and does seem to indicate that they understood water navigation through lakes and whatnot, but obviously possible ocean travel as well. So we are running out of time here. We got about a minute left. So if there's anything else we can add here to wrap this up, I'd love to hear your thoughts, David. Because
Well, I would just say that, that I think the takeaway here is even though there are mundane shows that seem like nothing ever happens, like in The Curse of Oak Island, when they find those nails and when they find those little bits and pieces, those are parts of a puzzle. Piece it together. Don't give up on history. History is so important. It's so amazing, and archaeology is the key to history.
totally. So That's why we support anything. If you're out there trying to find this stuff, we want to help you find it. We want those discoveries. We want to better understand where we came from. That's what we're all about.